Hello everyone, it's Josh from Chip Theory Games, and today I wanted to take you through a little bit of the journey that we went on when making this beast right here. I always find it fascinating to watch how things come together, whether it be our projects or others, but in this case I thought you'd appreciate seeing some of the bumps along the way and just showing off the final product. I know a lot of people have already seen most of what exists on the inside and outside of this box, but maybe you'll glean a few interesting bits off of the journey. So let's jump right in. I just want to talk quickly about the mentality that we went into with this beast. Overall, we kind of wanted to make sure that structurally we knew this was gonna have to hold, I don't know, 30 to 50 pounds. We were trying to project what else we would be packing into this thing in the future. And we wanted to make sure that it not only held that content, but literally held that content from a weight perspective. And so that was one of the first challenges we put Justin on, was make sure everything fits. Here's a very loose guess at what we think could be coming. And what kind of space that would take up in the box, and then let's get an all-in put together here and see what kind of weight we're going to be up against. And so he did an incredible job with that, coming up with some great estimates for us and dimensioning out everything. We knew that we wanted it to be kind of like the second piece of this was we just wanted it to be usable. It needed to be the showpiece that it is. But it also needed to be extremely functional for our owners. And so the functionality of the box shows up when you start to see all of the extra trays that we included. Certainly the size that it fits in a Calyx, but that was kind of a nice thing that we were able to accommodate. But I think more than that, we wanted it structurally sound, and we wanted it to be useful. So we started with, let me just see if I can get this out here. This was our first white box. And the way this worked, and I still love this front, it's unfortunate we weren't able to kind of keep this kind of gateway option. But what we found very quickly with this was, one, cardboard wasn't likely going to cut it. We had these full trays filled up in there, and we started pulling them out and leaving them out about halfway just to see what that kind of pressure would be like and what it would do. And very quickly we saw that this cardboard was starting to pull away or just flat out rip. And this is the neoprene tray. So it's a heavy one because it's got the cards in the front, neoprene. But everything below it is, this is the neoprene tray. This is the gear lock tray. Everything below this point is even heavier. So if it couldn't hold up the gear locks, we knew that this wasn't looking good. The other thing about this is just, you can see just how, this is pretty strong box material. It would be fine for a board game box that's going to live on your shelf, but to hold, this much weight, it just wasn't going to cut it. So we had to do away with not only this gate design, this cool magnetic flip front, but also cardboard altogether. But before we got to that point, we ran a couple other samples. We did our second white box. This one was similar. We hadn't eliminated cardboard altogether yet. We were still kind of thinking that we could just beef it up. And I won't show you all the insides of this, but we first tried to solve that problem with reinforcing the trays themselves, making them double thick cardboard. And the assumption was that as the trays are inside, they're providing some of the structure for the actual box itself. And unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. It wasn't holding up. And as those trays get removed, that structure goes away. And it's usually the most stressful point for the box when that tray is coming halfway out and kind of leaning forward because of the weight, and it's putting pressure on these points. And they were, again, separating. So that's where we abandoned that altogether. and we went with something that was much more sturdy. We have to give credit to our manufacturer, because they were doing the same types of tests, and they came back saying, you know what, you've got to consider MDF. And I think that was another point in the journey for me where it was like a no-brainer, I guess. Both the magnet and the choice to go MDF we weren't even to the point of needing to factor cost in yet. And that's something that it's going to sound really weird. Chip Theory, I think, is uniquely positioned due to us not being in retail currently, where we can have a first, a second, a third round of development cycles ultimately without talking price yet. It gets us a lot further down the design road and gets us further into the scope of what was the original intent, before having to talk about that. And right or wrong, I think it allows us to have a much more impressive final product. It does definitely dip into profits, but I think one thing that I wanted to talk about with this is this piece was made to be a showpiece, and the profitability, to say that we're not concerned about money or profits would be incorrect. I just think that I saw the profitability of this piece showing up once it was delivered, people being really truly impressed with this thing, and then wanting to fill it out. Like, if you have a cool piece that you want to show off and it has empty spots in it because you don't have all the gear locks yet, like, if it's cool enough, and if it works, and if it's usable enough, and if it really enhances your game, like, if all those things prove themselves out, you're gonna fill this up. And that is where the money comes in, like, from, like, getting back what we've put into this, is from the sales of all the items that actually go in it. So it's not, it was just an interesting thing. We haven't really approached other products quite the same way, but it gave us the ability to, the magnets, for instance, is a good example of that. Andrew Chesney gets the credit for the original idea there, but we've often joked about magnets. It just if we get stuck on something, well, let's consider a magnet. And they're usually pretty costly to go that route when we're talking about designing something. But in this case, it just was perfect. Andrew, saw us doing something with magnets, kind of testing something unrelated to this, across the room, and was like, wait a minute. And he went over and he grabbed some magnets and he, put them in front of this thing we had, and put like a metal backer behind it. And we tested, we're like, this could be a thing. And I think that was another point where it was just so refreshing to not be like, whoa, wait a minute. How much does that cost? Eventually we had to do that. But initially it was just really awesome to be like, oh, heck yeah. Yeah, like, of course we have to do this. Which, I don't know, like it is a joy of being able to produce stuff like this. The magnet ended up coming out really cool. It was another kind of, for me, it was an excuse to do it, was because we had not done quite as intricate a molding that used alloys and needed to fuse an actual magnet inside. Not fuse it. It twists in with a screw. But coming up with that, using Bennett to help us concept that and then make it, render it, and then send that over to our manufacturer and have them come, basically saying, here's the kind of the brushed look we want, and then having them come back with this. It couldn't be more rewarding in that sense. The magnet, I think, would be one of the top things that I'd say came out just as we had hoped it would. So this magnet, probably the biggest challenge with this magnet was how hard do we, like, how big do we make it, and how much do we want it to stick? it's pulling heavy trays. And so in this case, we had to make sure that, like, I think we upgraded the magnet 2 or 3 times, and still we didn't want it to be so strong that it started to pull the plate that's sunk into the front of the tray, that it would start to pull that hard enough where you could see the outline. On our first boxes, that was very much the case, because they literally put the plate right behind the paper, so it wasn't sunk into the back or the middle of the tray. It was sunk into the very front part of it, and so when we would pull, you'd start to see that plate kind of lift away from that front divider, and that wasn't going to work for us. So, you know, trying to fill things out and make sure that we had just enough where it wasn't a pain to get it off, but still be able to deal with a drawer as heavy as this one, which you have to pull it a little bit slower. Like if you were to put it on and yank this off, it's going to come right off. But that was the intent, was that any bigger magnet than this, you're affecting and harming the box. But at this point, it was solid enough where with the right amount of pull pressure, you'd be able to open it. So I don't know, stuff like that really excites me about this box, because it's a very kind of a minimalistic aesthetic to it. You don't have a lot going on other than the art in the front of this box, and I just think it looks beautiful in that respect. So I think just another note on structure, you'll see that again, this is one of the heaviest boxes. This is fully loaded. Every card, every mat, it even factors in some of the potential future stuff that we've got. But the MDF was a totally correct call, in that the structure here is solid, and we just love how that turned out. And in line with that, the gear lock tray, again, you can see from the side, there's the only play here is the play we intentionally left in there to allow this to slide easily in and out. So there's just nothing moving with the MDF, which is great, by the way. So this is current gear locks loaded in, if you can see that. The other aspect to this that came kind of after a while was the labels. So that was another challenge that we've run into some interesting parts. So this is the label. Now these labels are very much like our stickers on our chips. So they've got it's a foil. It's a sticky foil that then has a layer of heavy plastic over the top of it for protection and whatnot. And so we wanted that to be the sticker that we use, just because it helps with the scuffing and whatnot. But that's the look that we're going for. We have a little knockout for the gear lock themselves. And then this tray is one of our gear lock trays. And I'm trying to be careful so I don't fling everything. This along with pretty much every tray that we designed for the Trove Chest, so enough of these trays come right with the chest. Same with the Tyrant trays. There's enough for every single Tyrant in the game. And they were designed to sit on your table and look just as nice outside of the box as inside. Functional, but something that looks minimal on the table, because we would want you to use this right alongside your gear lock mat. So this is made to sit alongside it just a little bit away, so you still have room for all your exhausted dice. And but again, it came out beautiful. And this actually, if you wanted, could inset basically to give it a little bit of height, so it fits in opposite and can hold your dice. But yeah, every piece of this, I think we tried to factor in the play that was going to be done with the piece, and then how it was going to be used to store the components. when not in play. One other thing I'll just touch on here is I'll just get back to the labels. So these turned out excellent. They stick. They actually allow you to kind of, they stick with enough stick that when you press them down, they're not moving. But in the process of placing them, they're malleable, like they move a little bit. You can kind of push them one way or the other to get them exactly where you want them. So then we were like, well, let's do these types of stickers for everything. Of course, right? So we went ahead and made some protectors. This was a little bit of a right at the end thought of, hey, if this was to be too hard on your box, you could take one of these and stick it to the box, and it would be like a key that you're, that's kind of for that tray, and it would just protect the magnet from the art. Someone brought up the fact that maybe you could just stick this sticker to the bottom of the magnet, and that actually would work probably really well as well. So there's lots of different ways. We haven't found, we've been using this for the last a good while. Like this one, not for the last month, but the previous sample we've been using for over a month, and that has held up just perfectly. So we don't intend to use these stickers, but and we didn't want to go clear, because clear on here, it just doesn't look as good. It looks like something's there that shouldn't be there. So we wanted it to be a physical key if it was going to be something at all. So that was our thought process on that. They came out fine. But what I wanted to get to was the little tiny labels. So that's for our little chip dividers. So one of the things that came out of this was these, I think this was kind of a latter part of the campaign, were these little chip dividers. And these are for like sectioning out your baddies, your gear locks, your anything, your tyrants, separating out all of those pieces so that they're more easily grabbable and sortable and whatnot. And we wanted to make this thing as versatile as possible. So we wanted these to fit right in your tray, have the cover go right on over without it impeding or blocking anything. We wanted them to be able to be flipped both ways, so that you could label them one way or the other. And the idea was that you take one of these things, you got this cool little sticker, and you put it on. So now you know that this is Beast 5-point baddies, and then you can sort them as such. Now, this was an awesome idea until we got the final. Like they're being loaded in the containers. One's actually on its way here right now. We got this. We tested these a number of times, but we got the finals and we put them on the stickers, and then a week or so later, I went back and I was like, oh man, I didn't push one of those down hard enough, and so I pressed it back down. Next day I was showing someone, and oh my goodness, it's popped up. Why did it pop up? Well, problem is that this plastic that's on top of this label is rigid enough that due to the contour of this, that plastic is fighting against the stickiness of it. And so the plastic that's protecting the sticker is pulling, it wants to go flat, and it's pulling up the sides of the plastic. So, I mean, even at this late date, we're faced with an oh crap moment, because it's just not something that any of us anticipated. This same issue kind of became an issue. Like at that point, it jumped, kind of went to my head that I need to check the tyrant trays. So I checked the tyrant trays, and sure enough, the tyrant trays themselves have a little indent for these stickers, and you can put them in, but unfortunately with the tyrant trays, the indent that allows for the sticker to go in it's not a sheer angle, it's a rounded angle. So at the bottom isn't as wide as the top, and so the top is what fits the label, the bottom isn't. So when I put this on, if I look on the inside, I can see that the very bottom, the sticker isn't actually sticking to it. And even if I press it down, the rigidity of the plastic pulls it up. So what do we do? Well, thankfully our manufacturer's gotten used to our last minute kind of our, okay, no, we have to fix this instances. And so called them up, and the first 2 shipments of Trove chests we're already addressing. Those are the ones we don't have time to do anything about, other than, like, we're going to have these printed without the plastic on top. The plastic's great, it protects them, but not for this use. We already have an indent, so it's fine. We're gonna have them print these and these again without the plastic. We're actually gonna take the die cut down a little bit on these, and in the end, they're gonna be packaging those, air shipping them to the 2 locations that these containers are arriving at. They'll get there before the containers, and then, yep, we'll pay to have the boxes opened and have these sticker sheets inserted in. After the first 2 containers, the rest, they'll actually have these done by that time, and we'll be able to just include them along with the Trove chests. So anyway, just I don't know, that was a long story, I guess, but I think it illustrates just how like I'm not willing to let this Trove chest, like, it's a small thing, but it's a huge thing when it comes to the look and feel of this piece. If the stickers aren't sticking, or if they're just not performing as they should, like, nope, doesn't work for us. So we went ahead and changed it kind of at the last hour to make sure that everyone was pleased with their product. Yeah, I guess, other than taking you through, there's a few more things I'll kind of show off here, and then we can call it good. But the Trove chest itself, I would say, couldn't have turned out better. The structure of it is a 10 for me. The art on this thing is a 10. Melanie did an awesome job. Along with Anthony. Anthony did the work for us. He does so much of our art, and Melanie, though, put it together and basically made it look as kind of degraded as it is, like this thing has been sitting around for ages. And so between that, the front that has a really cool inside to it, between all of those pieces, I couldn't be more pleased with the art. This piece, I'll just go through. We had a number of questions about this piece. One, where does the magnet get stored? So I'll address that now since I'm talking about this face. The magnet, we weren't sure because we were upping the strength, and then we were like, nope, we got to stop with that. We stopped at a certain point. But then we were working with thicknesses on this piece here. The intent was always to make sure that it somehow attached to the front. But again, we didn't know exactly how things were going to end up as far as this thickness and the magnet strength. So we made it so that at least it was always going to work on the bottom here. So right now, anywhere along this side where the metal plate is on this tray will work for holding your magnet. And it basically uses this ledge on the bottom as a way to not slide any further down, because it is weaker, but it is certainly, it's certainly strong enough to hold it. You could try other places, like there's other places where the magnet is, but it just doesn't stick where the amount that we would want. So this is where you could store it. The other thing, the other possibility is if you wanted to orchestrate some type of a pull tab, you could store it in one of these. But I just think that kind of ruins the aesthetic of this being fully openable by magnets. So yes, you could store it on top if it wasn't in a Calyx. There's lots of other options there, but we felt like the best one that is pretty secure is right there on the front of your Trove chest. So that's one thing. The other question that I had from a few people was specific dimensions. So I'll just be clear. Calyx is it lists on IKEA's website 33.6 centimeters for the width and the height. And it rounds that off on some of the graphics to just 33 centimeters, but just know that a Calyx is 33.6, which roughly comes to like 13.23 inches. And therefore, this is exactly 13 wide by exactly 13 tall. And so it's gonna fit, but it's gonna fit really, really snugly, and that's what we intended. So we don't have a lot of space in here. We altered a number of things in order to allow for that to take place, but it does fit perfectly. Depth-wise, it is exactly the depth of a Calyx, which is 15.3/8, I think. Yeah, 15.3/8. This measures in at 15 and 5/16, so it's right there. Of course, you'll want to be hanging it out over the edge, potentially because you need to slip this up in order to get this out. So basically, yeah, that's the thought behind it. As far as anything else with dimensions go, I don't think there was any other questions. We have internal dimensions. So these right here are all specific to the items that they're holding, but I won't go through those now. But the main thing that changed over the versions was we widened one of the base trays that are the chip trays, and that was just so that it could hold a couple other things like our dice trays. So we wanted our dice trays to fit in there. And then we also wanted to bring the structure point here to a little bit different spot. So yeah, there was a couple reasons that we went that route. The only other thing is that I want to talk about, I guess, maybe one of the finer details is we really tried hard to account for the longevity of this piece. Again, after our tests with the first ones, we were it got me really worried that we had initially I thought we had bit off a little more than we could chew, because they were just not holding up to all of the TMB content that we were putting in it. And so I was just, maybe in the middle part, I was kind of questioning whether we could do this in a way that would meet our standard. And but one of the things that was important to us, and it's worth noting here, was just the amount of times that you're opening these trays up made it really important that the graphic finish on the front. So normally from a aesthetic, for me, I would say let's wrap this graphic around the side of the tray so that it's just full flush and it looks beautiful. But the minute you wrap it around the side of the tray and you put it in, the edge of that graphic could catch and start to tear and rip, because we want it snug and secure. So that graphic, if it's wrapped around the side, is now going to potentially hit the edge of the Trove chest itself and start to tear that graphic. So it was important that we give up a little bit of the aesthetic and finish those graphics so you can kind of see the bordering here. And that line is because that wrap is going around in front, and it's terminating at the edge before the corner. A similar kind of thing that I think is worth noting is that the trays here, and I'll see if I can get this out for everyone to see. The card areas where your deck boxes or your open cards are going to go, you have dividers that go in there. Normally the wrap finishes at about a 1/2 inch over the other side. But knowing that this was a tray that these things are going to come out of, we really didn't want the cards to be below where that wrap finishes. We wanted the wrap to extend below where the cards are, and if you can see right here, the wrap goes below it so that you're never actually, catching on the graphic wrap of the tray. Little things like that, I really appreciate everyone on the team that helped kind of factor a lot of that stuff in, so that we could make sure that this Trove box lasted as long as possible, and that it just becomes that piece that will be something that you can show off for years to come. I think that kind of does it. I guess the only other thing I'll probably mention with the weight is that when we started, this backers, as you know, many of you are one, paid $75 for this thing, which is kind of laughable now. I still think there's that it was worth it to sell it at that price initially, just because for us, Kickstarters there's still some discovery left. We don't have our products finalized when we run our Kickstarters. We use a lot of the feedback that we get from the Kickstarter to influence the final stages of design, all of that. So just like that for this Trove Chest, we were taking a percentage amount of guess on what this thing was going to end up like. And looking at where we started to where we are now, you're getting some real value at $75. We then bumped our plan was that the MSRP would end up at around like 95 to 100. Now that's already at 110 on our website. And then we got in the news that, yeah, it's 11 containers, and here's the shipping estimates of your now much heavier box because of MDF. And it'll likely take another bump up to 125. So I'm just saying, thanks to everyone who trusted us on this, because it is a little bit of a leap of faith. Hopefully we've shown ourselves worthy of that faith. But yeah, I mean, that's the reason to go in with us at the beginning, is because usually the value, we're always going to make sure the value's there with a piece like this, and any of our games too. And so I'm just excited for everyone to get it and kind of revel in the awesomeness of this thing. And yeah, again, thanks for everyone for all your support. Couldn't be more pleased with how this came out, and I hope that this was semi-informative for you. So thanks, everyone.